Now we're getting into a team that really stood out throughout the year, um, really made a splash early on, and went out and got one of the best quarterbacks that was available in the portal last year and backed up the Brinks truck for Cam Ward. We're talking about the Miami Hurricanes here. Great season. Cam Ward, one of the best players in the country, Heisman finalist. He deserved every bit of credit that he got. He was that team.
Absolutely. Miami was a 7-6 football team last year. They went 10-3 this year, and if Cam Ward isn't their quarterback, they probably would have been 7-6 again.
Or worse.
Or worse. Mario Cristobal, in his third season there at Miami, definitely relied on Cam Ward to make that team go. And unfortunately, they hit some bumps in the road that prevented them from being a conference champion and potentially a playoff team. They opened the year up with a great win over Florida, who at the time wasn't seen as much, but by the end of the year was playing great football, and they absolutely dominated Florida. Miami was definitely the strongest team in the state of Florida this year. We'll get to Florida State later.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And the first part of the season, they were just an absolute offensive juggernaut. They scored 38 points or more in their first 9 games. At that point, they were number 5 in the country, and they were 9-0. Now, they had some close calls in there. It wasn't like, yes, they were scoring a lot, but it wasn't like their defense was always great. They had a game at Virginia Tech where Virginia Tech threw a Hail Mary that was completed, that got waved off on the last play of the game. And then they went out and played Cal, and they were down 25 points, and they had to rally to beat Cal. So there were some signs there that, hey, yeah, they can score, but the defense may not be quite what they expect to match.
Or even good enough.
Right. And then at that point, everything fell apart when they lost to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that was kind of that was a big shocker that weekend. I remember watching that game, and I was actually pulling for Tech. I'll say it, as a Georgia fan. It was kind of fun to see just huge underdogs there, and Tech played a great game, really hard-nosed game, and pulled it out. It was a big shock.
And Miami deserved to lose that game because you knew exactly what Georgia Tech was doing in that game. That was the game that Haynes King was hurt. And so they were rotating quarterbacks the whole game. They'd put Haynes King in to run the ball because he couldn't throw it, and they'd put in Philo in whenever they wanted to throw it. And so they were telegraphing what they were doing, and Miami still couldn't stop them. And they finally got close at the end, and I think they threw an interception or whatever it was, but the cracks that had been there all season finally showed, and they couldn't overcome it. Now, they were playing in the ACC, and so they still had a shot to make the playoffs. After that was all said and done, they were staring the playoffs in the face. They would have almost guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoffs, and they would have been in the conference title game instead of Clemson. And then they lost to Syracuse to close the season.
Yeah, I have a bone to pick with Miami. The whole season, I kept saying, yeah, this is the team I trust the least. And then the week before they lose, I had said, okay, I get it. Just watching Cam Ward, I'm in. They're real. And then they go and lose to Georgia Tech. So I was frustrated with Miami at that point. So I was happy when they lost to Syracuse. I thought that was a fantastic way to end the season. And I was so happy for Syracuse and Fran Brown.
And that wasn't the end of the season for Miami, though, because when they did play in the bowl game, they played in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the greatest bowl game there is.
Yes.
And then they were part of another weird situation. Cam Ward had opted in to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, made a big deal, and they were playing great. They were leading at halftime, and they came out the second half, and he was out of the game, like he had pulled himself out of the game. and there was lots of controversy about it. I don't know if it was a plan or what it was, but I mean, the media blew it up. But as soon as he came out of the game, they sucked, and they ended up losing the game, and it kind of left a sour note on the end of their season.
Yeah, I think he played just to break Case Keenum's all-time yardage record for passing, which got broken a few days later, a week later, by Dylan Gabriel.
So like I said, Cam Ward was awesome. He was obviously in New York as a Heisman finalist. And this was a good team. They finished up number 18 in the country, but when you look at the potential of what they had going into that Syracuse game, all they had to do was win that game and they would have been in the playoff, because they would have played in the conference championship game at 11-1. And even if they would have lost to another 11-1 SMU, they would have made the playoff. SMU made the playoff after losing to Clemson. So certainly they would have been in. So, all this hope and everything, it's just kind of frustrating, because how many years has Miami now been in the ACC? What is it? Almost 20 years now. They've never won the conference.
That's incredible.
After almost 20 years. So just another missed opportunity, I really think, for them. For that reason, like I said, they were a great team. They got up to number 5 in the country. They had a Heisman finalist. They certainly improved their record from the year before. So I gave them a B.
That's fair. I actually gave them a B minus. And the reason being is they had very disappointing losses, and that defense was really, really bad when they needed them most. When they played decent teams, you saw how bad it was. And like you said, if they beat Syracuse, they're probably in the playoff. So he should have been there. So B minus from Burrell. As far as their record goes, since they could have made, I'm considering the fact that I think they could have made the playoff, like they were a bubble team.
They were 10-2, so they were definitely in consideration.
Yeah.
So
like we said, if they win that game, they're in probably.
Yeah.
So they get a B for that reason.
And so the final score for the Miami Hurricanes from the Nitro Show in 2024 is a B minus.